Hi, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. On today's show, we've got Joey Pamic. I've known him for years. I've put many deals together with him and watched him as he's grown his career and his business. One of the proverbial serial entrepreneurs. He's got a background in private equity and he's been building a local company to much success. Here's my conversation with Joey Pamic. Joey, thanks for joining us here today. How are things looking in your world?
Hey, yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Things are great.
Things are good. Always good. I've been looking forward to this chat for a while. You and I've talked. We've worked together through the years, obviously, and bought and sold a lot of businesses. It's been sort of your pedigree. You've cut your teeth doing just that. First, I guess in Toronto, now doing it in Ottawa. What led you down that path? When did you decide that's what you wanted to do for a living?
It's a great question. I think it came up some point during my undergrad, really having no idea what I wanted to do, having this, seeing and hearing about investment banking, private equity, hedge funds, and the allure mainly towards money when I was a naive, 18, 19-year-old, got me interested in this whole world and was lucky enough to land a job and start a career down this path.
That's great. Yeah. And I love how you allude to, the young naive, like money, 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 right? We think back to the day of what that all meant and how it evolves. You have put a lot of money to work, right? And that's the reality of things is money creates the ability to create more, to buy, to grow. And you've done just that. You, I guess, as you say, from school, had an inkling that you might be involved in this. What took you to Toronto? You did your schooling in Ottawa originally and ended up in Toronto. How did you get there?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad here in Ottawa, Bachelor of Commerce at Ottawa U, and had no idea what I wanted to do career-wise. Was coming up to graduation. At the time, I was studying for the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, was going down that path. So when I graduated, I wrote level one. I passed level one, but I was without a job because I did not plan ahead of time like some of my classmates did, and was scouring the job boards and found a role in Toronto working for a large mutual fund company called CI Investments. And my in there is they wanted someone who spoke French, and I was fortunate enough to have learned French at a young age and working at CI as a financial service representative.
There you go. The
title.
There's your the proverbial intro position, right?
That was it. Not as sexy as my friends going into investment banking, but it got me to the city and got me down a path that ultimately led me to where I wanted to be or where I am today.
And CI became, or I think it's been bought and sold a number of times, right? It's obviously a huge fund, or has grown to be in that shape and form. How long were you there? How long did you stay with CI?
That's a great question. So when we started at CI, they start you off in a training class, and there was kind of, I don't know, maybe a dozen of us going through this 2 or 3 month intro program together to learn, what the mutual fund industry was all about. And they said that one of you will not be here in 3 months. And I guess I was that cliche who left at 3 months. I was fortunate enough to find a job working for a boutique private equity firm. And I was the one who left, at that 3 month mark.
Yeah, and which is fairly common, right? Because especially that intro position, you get on with something like CI, a large fund, and then there's spinoffs. I've seen it sort of regularly, and you really got a chance to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. Really start doing deals once you hit the private equity fund, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when I moved to Toronto, CI took me to Toronto. That's where the finance capital of Canada is, and that's why I wanted to be there, to network and to learn the ecosystem. And then I was researching firms, trying to find my way into smaller firms. I didn't have the same pedigree as some of my, peers that went to more desirable universities and programs like that. So I was trying to be kind of scrappy and tenacious, and found a fund called Lynx Equity Limited, which specialized in acquiring small to medium-sized businesses. At that point, they were focused only in the Canadian market. They looked for companies doing between $500,000 and $2 million of EBITDA, and they wanted someone to join as a junior accounting analyst. Was the title. Wasn't what I wanted to do, but it got me into the firm and the industry, so I went for it.
There you go, and getting your foot in the door, and then really starting to see deals. And I think maybe it was from there where you and I mean, there's been other business dealings and other ways that we found each other in the past, but I think I started getting like the odd question that would come through to me where you were working on something and you were seeing something as you put a deal together. How did you structure those first deals, or how did you I mean, I would say that, very early on, you were swimming with the sharks, right? You were doing it. You were the front line. You were making deals happen from a very early time. So I would imagine there was a lot of on the job training, really. I mean, it's not the type of stuff that you're really learning in university, right? What were some of those lessons you learned early on?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah. So I was in that kind of accounting role for 6 months, then moved over to the analyst and kind of grew up throughout that kind of those private equity hierarchy. And yeah, like Lynx was a small firm and it was very much, here is our way of doing things. Here is kind of training as we're, you get to watch the partners negotiate deals, what they're looking for, learn how to do diligence through them and kind of learn how to put it all together and get across that finish line after, a couple months of negotiations and a few months of diligence. So there was a lot of, it was sink or swim. It was learning, it was trying to keep up. And, eventually it got to a point where I got a grasp of what we were doing and was able to do it on my own. But yeah, it was an interesting period because, these small companies, as you know, they don't have perfect information, perfect financials, perfect data, perfect records. So a lot of it is trying to really understand what they do, how they do it, find the skeletons in the closet, uncover those risks, and make sure that what we're investing in is worth the risk.
Yeah, and there's an art to it. I like the way you just described that, right? Because especially a smaller company, oftentimes, yeah, it's not, they haven't invested the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars required to put everything in perfect order. But that provides some of the opportunity or creates some of the opportunity. You mentioned learning from some of the partners or learning the way that things are done. Joy, what are some of the things that you like? Some of the real world things that you have to think through when you're trying to put a deal together. When you're actually looking at a business and talking to a business owner and saying, hey, look, we think there's an opportunity here for us to do a deal, but we need to do this, this, and this. What are some of those things that come up in those early stage conversations?
Yeah, number one, it's all the relationship with the seller. We're talking about small companies. The people are everything, whether it's the seller, the employees, the customers, the suppliers, the system is very small. So you need to get very good at building rapport with those sellers. Because ultimately you have to believe or disbelieve what they're telling you. And you have to, and some of that is beyond what's in the documents and what's in the statements. Because things are not always captured perfectly. So being able to build rapport, understand and get people to like you and to trust you, that's probably, the most important soft skill that isn't taught in school and that most people probably don't associate with private equity. You think a lot about, especially in the junior ranks, modeling, spending your 12, 14, 16-hour days on Excel. Yes, that's part of it, but that's a much smaller portion of doing deals, especially in the small to medium size, where there's a lot of intangibles.
Yeah, there sure are. And as you say that, those are the things that you're learning from the partners, from the people that are actually there, showing that you got to build a relationship. Oftentimes, for these types of companies, it's somebody's baby. They've given birth to it. They've grown it up, and they might be in a spot where they're prepared to move on themselves, and they want to know that it's going to be left in good hands, or maybe their legacy is going to continue. What are some of the things that you're able to do to build that rapport? With time in, obviously, but you're trying to get deals done as well, so you want to make sure that it doesn't take a long time to get to completion. So what are some of the ways to actually build that rapport and give the comfort that a seller may be looking for?
It's funny you asked that because I just came back from a lunch where I met with a prospective seller, and I reached out to them. They have an interest in selling, but instead of jumping to here's the non-disclosure document, send me your financials, it's kind of taking the time to say, well, let's go grab lunch, let's talk, let's meet face to face. And it's easy to do when that's an opportunity in your city, because that's not a lot of time, not a lot of money to go and do that. You can't do that with every opportunity. But with this individual, it led to a good 2-hour conversation about how he got into the business, what he likes about it, why he wants to sell, where he's at in his personal life. And that pays dividends down the road, especially when it, if we can achieve, a letter of intent and agree on acquisition terms, you need to get through 3 to 4 months of diligence. And there can be a lot of challenging times throughout that, where people have different opinions, different viewpoints, and those can be challenging as far as continuing a relationship. So having it start off on this footing makes a much easier path ahead.
Yeah, for sure it does, right? You're finding ways of working together. I know working with you, I know working with others, is you're putting a deal together. I mean, you've got a willing buyer, you've got a willing seller, right? With a common goal to seeing a transaction close. There may be bumps along the road, as you say, some differences of opinion, differences in numbers, right? Obviously the seller wants to see more, a buyer would prefer to pay less. Trying to arrive at something that works for everybody is a challenge. If you've laid the right groundwork, you've got sort of a structure for doing it, and then the ability to work through, right? Work through the differences, or the bumps in the road as they do arise. What's an example story that you can share of where things have come off the tracks, have derailed, and either not gotten back on at all for whatever reason, or you've been able to sort of salvage the situation? Can you think of any, going back to your war story chest here, give me an example of something that may have occurred that you'd be like, I wish that had happened differently, or they say, we're glad that it actually worked out this way?
Yeah, well, we've been on deals together that haven't got across the finish line due to sellers changing their mind about key terms. They want to sell their business. They want to stay on for a transition period, which is very common because there's a lot of knowledge that they have that needs to be, passed on to the new owner. And then at the 11th hour, they say, oh, by the way, we want to increase the rent the company is paying to our own facility, or we want to increase what our salary is. And although those may be expenses the business could afford to take on, that does burn the trust. And in buying a small company, you're really investing in the sellers, and that trust is paramount. And without that, you don't want to necessarily go ahead and do the deal. So I've seen that happen before, where it's got completely derailed because that foundation of trust has been burned. There's really tough to come back from that point. There's been deals where people have not disclosed certain things. Back in my Toronto days, we were acquiring a company, and there was a major lawsuit from their largest competitor that they didn't disclose until it came up in legal searches, which you do that typically towards the end of a transaction.
Yeah, you've already invested. So yeah, typically, as you say, there's going to be a trust factor. So, oh, by the way, you forgot to mention this. It becomes an issue.
Yeah. So that was a breakdown of trust. And though we did not pursue the deal past that point. So I've seen things like that several times, where stuff comes up in diligence or people's perspectives change and you can't get a deal back on the tracks. And sometimes it's just about finding a solution or a common ground. And it's much easier to do that when neither party feels like they've been deceived.
Right. And it's business, right? So hey, we're trying to put something together here. It's interesting to say that. And you and I know, and from working together as well, we talk how if you're not going to pound a square, round peg, square hole here, round hole, square peg, whatever you want to say. I mean, if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. There's always another deal to be had, isn't there?
There are plenty. We live in this time where ETA is a term used quite often. Entrepreneurship through acquisition is a very popular topic. The concept of a search fund, all these are very common MBA career prospects for those who want to be entrepreneurs but don't have their own idea, don't want to create a business. They don't want to go from 0 to 1. They want to go from 1 to 2 or 1 to 10. And there is this gap, or this point in the market where a lot of baby boomers are retiring, and they need to find a succession plan. And a lot of their children aren't interested in taking over their blue collar businesses for a variety of reasons. So there's a plethora of deals, either ones that are currently being marketed by bankers or brokers or intermediaries, or just a lot of people who don't even know the world exists. And you can go and just reach out to and say, hey, have you thought about selling your business? What's your succession plan? And I can drum up a company probably a day if I spent my whole day focusing on just sourcing.
And that's interesting, Joy, as you say that, because I work with people that and work with brokers who are putting deals together. That's never been your approach, has it? You literally pick up the phone and what does that conversation look like? It's interesting that you're able to do that, and then it was great success. What's that conversation look like? How do you end up speaking with the decision maker? How do you get to the decision maker and then start having the conversation about possibly putting a deal together?
It takes a little bit of hard work and foraging to find out that information. If there's an industry that I'm interested in buying in a certain geography, I will search that company name in that geography and try to get a list through industry associations or through websites to find out the owner of the company, the name of the company, hopefully find their email. You can guess at email addresses. I did this one time where, most emails are first name at domain, first dot last name, first initial dot last initial. And you can guess at email address. I did this one time and an individual emailed me back irate that I emailed him, and he was so curious to how I found his email address, and he refused to believe that I literally guessed the combination and the domain name as the website name. So that was easy enough. But yeah, some people are very receptive to the cold call, cold email approach. Some are in that camp where they don't like it whatsoever. But trying to reach out to these owners, and if they're in the right demographic and they're not aware of the M&A world, they're not aware of transactions, they don't have friends or colleagues who have sold their business, it's a very foreign concept to them. But the last 3 deals that we've done together, 2 of those have been proprietary. There was no broker or intermediary involved. It was companies that I had reached out to out of the blue, and serendipitously, the owners were at an age where they were interested in selling, and we were able to structure a deal.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? As I say, I see people. Well, I mean, brokers are doing the same thing, right? So they're actually beating the phones or calling and reaching out to people. You've just always proven to have the mettle to go do it yourself, which is great, and you've put some great deals together for that. So it's interesting you did that, in Toronto for some time, and then I guess what was the order of operations here? Because you ended up doing, even as you mentioned, MBA. It's interesting you were cutting your teeth, and I've had a lot of people that are quite successful business operators, owners, in their own right, and then they elect to do an MBA, and you sort of fall into that category as well. What I guess what inspired you to do the MBA, and have you found that you've learned things through the MBA that maybe textbook, whereas you've been actually doing it and had seen it and were doing it in reality? And so what were the 2 differences between those things?
Yeah, I mean, I have a passion for learning, for reading, and the MBA is just such a common degree in the business world, especially in the high finance world of Toronto. It's almost a required stepping stone to get beyond a certain point, especially in this kind of investment world, that I always knew I wanted to do one. It just, the timing was never right. I was progressing in my career. I was fortunate to be promoted beyond the point where people typically go and get an MBA and come back. I was still advancing the ranks, but I still wanted to do it. For the learning, for the network, for the pedigree, for a variety of reasons. And I'm very happy that I did. But yeah, I did that after my time at Lynx. I then did my MBA. And it was a fantastic experience. It was a different program. It was one where it was a full-time, but you worked full-time and studied full-time. I was working for a family office investing on their behalf at that period. So it was definitely busy, but I like busy and I thrive in busy. And the learnings, it's different. MBAs are geared towards individuals going to work for large Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
A lot of the courses, a lot of the material, a lot of the professors, they're gearing their material towards that career progression. But there's always things you can take from how a large company does something and apply it to what a small company should be doing. And I try to look at most of the learnings with that lens. I knew I did not want to go work for a large company. I didn't want to go work for anybody else. Seeing the way Lynx did things was truly inspiring. And the founder of Lynx, Brad Nathan, was really a pioneer in starting this lower mid-market private equity, especially within Canada. So I just took, I knew what I wanted to get from the program and from the teachings, and some of the lessons really applied. Some are a little more difficult to apply to the world that I was going into, but overall it was extremely valuable.
And it's, I guess, the vernacular, right, or the language that you learn. And I've heard from people like you that said, look, I know I can do it. I also want to learn the methodology behind perhaps what some of the larger companies may describe things as, and then apply them to on a day-to-day basis on the things that you are doing on a day-to-day basis. So you get the MBA. You finish the MBA, and I guess we're spending the time at the family office at that time. And then you get into, and you move over to PowerTech, right? Into the current role that you have now, which I think was a big shot in the arm for PowerTech as you came in and immediately did a series of transactions, applying the learnings again from, I think, as we described, out of school, like cutting your teeth, the school of hard knocks, and then learning a little bit from the MBA as well, and putting it all into practice now. How does the future of PowerTech and what you're doing look in your eyes? What is it? What does the next 3 to 5 years look like from your perspective? Current trends continuing.
Yeah, so we've been at PowerTech for 3.5 years now. We've acquired 3 companies throughout that period. We've expanded to new geographies, to new service offering, new clients, new industry that we're servicing. So we've been really, our focus has been trying to grow the business, but by doing so responsibly and trying to diversify to mitigate risk. PowerTech is a commercial multi-trade contractor. And right now, the economic climate is such where building is questionable. Interest rates are up. We're seeing slowdown in building, but we don't just service the new condo development world. We service large facilities, research facilities, universities, the city, retail, you name it. So we've been really trying to diversify to strengthen the company to combat the cyclicality that exists within the construction market. Over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to continue to look for strong companies to acquire and look for strong leaders to hire to build the best companies that we can. We'll continue to look for other services that we're not in right now that are adjacent to what we're offering that would help continue to deliver a one-stop shop to our customers. We're constantly trying to make our customers' lives easier by making ourselves do what they need. So for example, we do work at the hospitals in town. We start off doing electrical work there. Well, now we can do HVAC, refrigeration, plumbing, and general contracting. So we can be what they need, make their lives easier, and secure more business from one customer because we offer more services. So that was kind of the plan when I came in. It's what we've done over the past 3.5 years and the past 3 acquisitions. We've, I would say, probably tripled in size throughout that period. And we'll continue to look for the right opportunities. We're not trying to force any acquisition because you add more businesses, more people, more customers, more suppliers. It makes things challenging. So it's about being really selective for the right future partners and opportunities.
But doing it methodically, as you say, right? That growth, that methodical growth, cover more areas, expand. It's interesting to hear you talk of it's actually by that diversification is actually creating a more secure, a stable business in that sense, which is interesting because you're operating in an industry that can be difficult, right? It has its ups and downs, as you say, cyclical. So it's great to think of the ways of protecting yourselves through those different cycles. As I say, 3 to 5 years, I hear the growth of the company specifically being addressed. But what do you think the markets look like? What do things look like, both we'll say locally, but beyond? What does business look like in the next 3 to 5 years in your mind? How do you? Anybody you can ask the question. Yeah. It's difficult to read the tea leaves, but where do you think we're going to be in 3 years? Are things going to be up? Are we going to have major struggles? Are we going to be facing a recession? What do you think things look like, as I say, in the next 3 years?
It's challenging. Bank of Canada paused on rates last increase, and the most recent data we saw is that inflation continued to increase. So hopeful that things get under wraps, but it seems like this is going to be a longer battle than the Bank of Canada or anyone business owners want to see. That being said, us operating in the construction space, a large driver of construction is immigration and housing needs, and there is this huge shortfall of housing, especially in the province and in the city. So there's two dynamics at play, and one is the cost is going up, but the people are going up, so the demand is going up, and that's keeping the market stable-ish after the decline that we've just seen. So it's hard to say where we'll be, but that again plays into our thesis of let's just continue to diversify.
Yeah. And I like to ask that question just to get a general sense from those that come on the show and otherwise how they see business in the next couple of years, right? Because you plan to it. It's interesting. You cite rates and you cite inflation. These things obviously all have an impact on your business, everybody's business, right? And they go forward. The other thing that we're looking at a lot is technology. AI is all the buzz, blockchain, as these new technologies emerge. Obviously, for the most part, construction, but expanding beyond. How much are you taking advantage of any of the new technology offerings that are now becoming ubiquitous on the business front for many of these companies?
I think construction has notoriously been slow to adapt to new technology. when I joined, the bulk of our technological infrastructure was Microsoft Excel, various workbooks and spreadsheets, nothing that spoke to each other. So we've undergone building out our own ERP platform and implementing that. And that's been a lot of work, but it's taken us a lot further and made our business a lot more streamlined, which has helped enable the growth that we've achieved. And then we continue to look for how can we implement AI into the business. You know, we've been using ChatGPT for simple things like writing proposals.
It's amazing, isn't it, to see just how quickly, I mean, you can generate certainly something to work with, right?
It's also easy to teach younger staff if you want someone to have some level of technical knowledge, or there's oftentimes, you know, the field staff are the technical experts and the office staff are the management experts, but they don't necessarily have that same transferable skill set, especially on the junior level in the office, and they may have to write reports about what it is the field is doing. You can go on ChatGPT and say, walk me through the steps to install ABC, and it will give you a very comprehensive list of what goes into that, and you can, you know, further prompt it to explain more to you, and that is making our staff more knowledgeable, and it's being more efficient with our time. We don't need to involve multiple people in some sort of marketing material that we would be drafting. So that is probably the most that we've used, and we're not even scratching the surface. I think there's a lot of tasks that go on within a business where AI can be implemented. The amount, you know, we've reduced a lot of the paper within our business, but there's still a lot you know, a lot of the back office is very traditional in how it operates. Invoices get sent in, a human puts those invoices into the computer, the system then sends it out for approval, it gets sent back for approval. So we've automated that piece, but there still is this required component to take an email invoice and then put it into the system manually, and then continuing through that process. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's trying to find the right solution for small business.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say, even, I mean, you say, you know, construction slow moving, right? Or because there's so much physically that needs to occur on a construction site as well to make things happen. But even from that, as you say, slow moving industry, making use of AI, right? It's going to change almost every area of our lives, touch every area of our lives, and obviously it's already having an impact on your business as well. It's great to hear you're making use of that way. How accurate as it's used? I mean, as I ask this question, different industry across different industries, there's all this discussion of hallucinations, right? Or the information that comes back from ChatGPT. How accurate, as you ask it, or you've seen people using it to ask it to instruct on how to do various tasks, have the responses been? Have they been pretty good generally?
I would say for the most part, when it comes to the technical side of our business, I am far from an expert.
Yeah, I get it. You're the MBA. You're the. I'm sure you take abuse from some of the guys on that basis.
I've spent very little time on the tools, so I can't answer. It's like, but from a finance perspective, if you plop in numbers and say model this out, it can do it. It cannot, as far as I'm aware, export to Excel yet. It can't export to PowerPoint, but I've gone and I said draft a PowerPoint presentation with the slides with this topic, and it will give you 12 slides full of content that you can then take into PowerPoint and create your own show. So I think it can make your tasks and your life a lot more efficient, but there's still a lot of human oversight to, you know, use it to its fullest. You can't just take what's in ChatGPT and present that out as finished product. There will inevitably be mistakes, or it'll have the wrong tone. So plenty of issues like that, but as a starting point, it's great.
Yeah, for sure. That's why, as I say, I like to ask that question across different industries, and most are saying, as you, that it's fairly good. You obviously have to look in on it and make sure it's producing answers you're comfortable with. But it certainly gives you a great sort of starting point, a great place to go from. Joey, fascinating to have this conversation. Watch, as I say, your career as it's evolved, but also the growth of the business as it's occurred. It's great to work with great people who are doing this type of thing. What motivates you? What gets you going? As you say, you've put these deals together. You're clearly a motivated person. What are some of the things that drive you every morning, every day?
That's a hard question to ask. It's changed a lot over time. From when I was young and naive and thought money was everything, to now where there's a lot more desire for work-life balance and lifestyle freedom and supporting one's family. Those are the drivers that are more important than anything else. Trying to create that level of security for myself and my loved ones, I think, is kind of the number one driver. I'm lucky to enjoy what I do. I kind of was looking for something and fell into it and have really prospered within
You've got
it.
a passion for it. You got a zest for it, right? It's great to see, right? And you bring it to deals and say, well, it's great working with you, because we look at stuff and as you say, it's clear that you enjoy it. You enjoy putting deals together. You enjoy making things happen. You've done that, well, ever since I've known you.
Yeah, so I love what I do. The work itself I find is challenging, it's rewarding, it's stimulating, and then the benefits can be great as well. It doesn't come without risk, and it's always trying to navigate the risk. But that's the goal, is to get to a point where you can take less risk.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you began this conversation. I mean, remiss for not saying this. We began this conversation. You're talking about being scrappy and pulling things up and getting things done. Let's talk about the Fight for Cure. You've got something coming up with that in the next little while. What's your training look like, and what is the event expected to look like?
Yeah, so Fight for the Cure, it's a large fundraiser here in Ottawa for the Cancer Foundation. I signed myself up as a participant and didn't know what I was getting into.
As a victim, yeah, it's great that you put your name forward for it, though.
Yeah, back in March when they started the process, and they pick 12 individuals to host 6 boxing matches. The goal is every candidate is going to tap their entire network to raise as much funds as possible for the foundation. Last year they raised something like $1.2 million.
Wow.
In one night. So we're going to try and match or beat that. But yeah, it's training 4 to 5 days a week. It's learning a new sport. It's stressful, but it's also been really great because the physical really helps with the work, I find. Training just puts you in a mindset to kind of be focused, and that transcends other parts of your life, and that's been fantastic. But we're getting up to the finish line. The fight is October 28th, and we're getting there. So it's it'll be exciting to go and step in the ring, and I'm looking forward to it.
Are you nervous?
Absolutely.
Yeah, how could you not be, right? I mean, as you say, it's not something that you're not a professional fighter, so you're going to be getting in there and showing. That's great.
Yeah, it'll be a great experience. I mean, I'm less nervous about the fight or getting hurt, more just you're in front of 1,000 people, the Ottawa community, people who I know, family there, and we're putting on a show. So it will be. I've never been a showman, but it will be interesting.
No, it's going to be great. So congrats on that as well. Thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate having you on and some of the things that you've shared here. I like to end these shows. Actually, first of all, anybody listening interested in maybe donating or doing something for the Fight for the Cure, but also interested in maybe selling their business or working with your business, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, email is probably the best way. joseph.pamic@power-tech.on.ca. It's a long one.
Well, as you say, I mean, I'm going to take from you just guessing the emails, right? Because you've actually reached out to these companies oftentimes just by guessing the emails. Yours is one maybe not the best to guess, but it's still possible. So you want to just say it one more time?
Yeah, joseph.pamic@power-tech.on.ca, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Joseph Pamic.
That's great stuff. So thanks so much for that. And Joey, I like to end these shows with one thing, as I say, when we talk what motivates you both in business and in life, but maybe one thing, or maybe a list of things, if that's easier, that you've heard over the years, or maybe that you heard earlier in your career that's resonated with you. Something that somebody listening here might say, that's a piece of advice that I'm going to take with me for the rest of the day, the rest of the week after I've listened to the show. Is there anything you can think of, any mentor or anybody that said anything to you in the past that's really stuck with you, that has found has worked for you, that you might be able to pass along to another?
Yeah, I think the number one is just in trying to navigate stress of career and life, is trying to put things into buckets, or this person called them parking lots. And what can you deal with now, and what goes in the parking lot to deal with later? If you put it in the parking lot, don't stress about it, because it'll get dealt with and you can't do anything about it now. I found that a very applicable way or framework for approaching things, because it's easy to have 5-10 things on your plate at once and you can't tackle that many things at once. But if you know that you're tackling them systematically and you've got this process that works for you, that was something that I was explained or taught a number of years ago, and it's kind of stuck with me as far as trying to manage the complexities of business or life.
All the things that we got to get through, right? That's just it. Well, thank you for taking the time to park with us here today.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the chat and look forward to having you next time on the Millionaire's Lure.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me, JP.